Mrs. Loftus, you're muted.
My bad. So for the text over.
Maybe you should say that while you can tell that we're praying so you can hear the prayers. Yes.
So for the text we're going to have tomorrow, are there like only essays or?
It kind of seemed that way since I didn't review anything else,
Oh, okay.
didn't it? Yeah. I'm seeing if Mr. Loftus sent us anything from the DOM about today. I don't seem to have internet.
Wait, we're not, huh? But we have both.
Huh?
Well, what are they doing for the disseminate? Why are they carrying all kinds of games?
7-8 is having a class party for Our Lady of Guadalupe, and they all brought something. They're having a big breakfast, and I think the games were from yesterday when we were reined in, though, and they brought the games from upstairs, downstairs, and now they're bringing them back.
Oh.
That's what I think is going on. Roses. Let's see. Nothing. I've got nothing right now. Sorry. We were on page 242. And at the very bottom, we have 752. Pope Zachary dies and is succeeded by Stephen II. Aistulf, king of the Lombards, threatens the Roman duchy. Pope Stephen brings about a treaty of peace, which is to last 40 years. Aistulf violates the treaty, besieges Rome, and levies a poll tax on the inhabitants. Stephen, that's the Pope, appeals in vain for help to the Eastern Emperor. Aistulf, who has in the meantime seized Ravenna and put an end to the Exarchate, proposes to annex Rome also to his dominations, but to leave to the Romans a degree of self-government under the protection of the Pope. The Romans must now either resign themselves to annexation or prevent it by calling in the help of the Franks. Neither the Pope nor the Romans wish to be Lombard subjects. They want autonomy, but they want it established not under the protection of an outside monarch, but under the supervision of the Pope himself. This is the solution of the problem required by the pontifical dignity. In other words, the Pope is subject to no earthly authority, political or otherwise. And if they had agreed to be annexed, then the Pope and his territory would have been under the authority of this Aistulf, king of the Lombards. And that's not right for the papacy because spiritual things are higher than temporal things, number one, and also the Romans didn't want it. So we've now got some provisional governing, temporal governing, but it's under the guise of the Pope. So please note that the Pope did not seek it. Okay, there's lots of criticism that can go around for the church and how she's governed and blah, blah, blah. And people are always looking to pick fights with the Crusades and the Inquisition and everything else. Just note that in this case, when the Pope receives temporal power over territory, he was not seeking it. Negotiations with King Pippin are begun. Pippin sends Chrodergang of Mentz and Duke Archer to Rome. Pope Stephen sets out with them for Pavia, where he makes a last vain effort to induce Aistulf to give up his designs against Rome. From Pavia, he proceeds to the court of Pippin. That's in 753, the next year. The interview between Pope Stephen and Pippin and Pantheon. Pippin requests Aistulf to avoid any display of enmity against Rome out of respect of the apostles Peter and Paul. Aistulf refuses the overtures of peace. A Frankish national convention is held at Kiersey on the Oins, April 14th. It is decided to make war on Aistulf and force him to yield to the Pope's demands. Pippin crosses the Alps. Aistulf, utterly defeated in the field, is obliged by solemn treaty to deliver up Ravenna and to guarantee the safety of Rome. Pippin receives from the Pope the title of Patrician or Protector of Rome and is solemnly crowned a second time by the pontiff himself. Aistulf, surprisingly not, violates the treaty, invades the Roman duchy, and invests Rome. Summoned by the Pope, Pippin again crosses the Alps and defeats Aistulf. Envoys of the Eastern Emperor try to induce Pippin to restore Ravenna and the other former Byzantine territories to the imperial government. Pippin refuses. He protests that he has undertaken the campaign out of love for St. Peter and to gain remission of his sins, and that no amount of bribery can make him change his mind. This is in italics, so it must be important. By a deed of gift deposited in the confession of St. Peter, Pippin makes over to the apostle St. Peter, to his vicar, and to all his successors, Ravenna and the other cities which Aistulf has been forced to give up. Thus originated the temporal sovereignty of the papacy, the guarantee of its independence in the exercise of its spiritual power. Nominally, Rome itself, which had not been conquered by Aistulf and hence did not belong to Pippin by right of conquest, still belonged to the Byzantine Empire, and the popes continued for some years to use the Byzantine coinage and the Byzantine mode of reckoning dates. This is by 750. When did we leave Boniface? 711. No. Muhammad was 570, and by 700, Mohammedanism is spreading all the way to Spain, but St. Boniface died in 752, so these same years. So the same years that all what we just read is going on, Boniface is securing up in Germany loyalty to Rome, which is going to come into play in a little bit. All right, bottom of the page. Extent of the papal territory. The papal territory, later known as the Papal States, embraced at this time A, the Duchy of Rome, that is, the city of Rome, Roman Tuscany, and the Roman Campania to Terracina. B, the Exarchate of Ravenna. C, the Pentapolis, or 5 cities southeast of Ravenna. After the time of Pope Stephen, we hear no more of a Roman duke. The Pope is the head of the government. The army, like the rest, is subject to his command. Quote, he claims no other dignity than that which accrues to him from his ecclesiastical position, and it is as the head of the Ecclesia Dei, the Church of God, that he at the same time assumes authority over the Respublica Romanorum, the Roman Commonwealth. I'm going to my map for just a minute, because I know Ravenna's. Where are you when I need you, Thomas? Okay, here we have Rome, down towards the middle south. Here's Ravenna and the 5 areas around Ravenna. So kind of this whole middle. I don't know what consists of the Papal States these days. But you see that? Military and ecclesiastical organization. So before, the Pope was a citizen of Rome, but he didn't rule temporally. Is everyone getting this? He was the spiritual leader, but he was just in a place in Rome, but he wasn't ruling any place in Rome. He was ruling the church, but not the place of Rome. Now in 754, we have the Pope who's got land, and he is the ruler, temporally as well as ecclesiastically. Military and ecclesiastical organization. We know very little of the military organization of the Roman state at this period. The population of the city on the left bank of the Tiber was divided into 12 groups, or scholae. The rest of the city formed 2 other groups. Besides the native population, there were groups of foreigners: Greeks, Saxons, Frisians, Franks, and Lombards. Okay, so we know where the Greeks are. Saxons are from England. The Frisians are from up somewhere near Germany. The Franks are in between France and Germany, and the Lombards are in between France and Italy. Did I get that all right, Thomas? I hope I did.
I think so.
At the head of each group, there was a patroness or military commander. The headquarters of the military were at the Palatine in the old imperial palace. Here, the general of the army and his staff resided. The ecclesiastical organization consisted of the cardinal priests, generally 25 in number, who constituted a kind of senate of the church. They were of less importance, however, than the cardinal deacons, always 7 in number, who were the permanent assistants and the ordinary servants of the Pope. Most of the temporal affairs of the church were committed to them. 7 cardinal deacons, not to be confused with the cardinal priests. There were 25 of them. The archdeacon was the director of the whole ecclesiastical organization. Next to the deacons came the subdeacons, divided into 2 groups of 7. Some of them were attached to the district government, others were in the immediate service of the Pope. The financial administration was presided over by the Archarius, or chief cashier, and the Sacellarius, or paymaster general. Connected with them were the advocates of the courts of justice. The pontifical finances were drawn in the main from the landed property of the church around Rome, the greater part of the former immense estates of the Holy See having been confiscated by the Eastern emperors. Some of these lands had been leased, others were cultivated under the direct supervision of the Pope. The peasants who worked on the latter estates were regarded as papal employees and formed a rural militia, which proved a great service to the Pope in the internal difficulties which beset their temporal government. Now, fast forward from, this is the 750s, fast forward to what we studied in the 1300s in Rome with the Guelphs and the Ghibellines and all that. That's centuries later, and we're still playing this game of temporal leadership in Italy connected with Rome.
Are we still playing the game today?
No. But I don't know what the papal states are today. I wonder if shown us. The government of the Lateran Palace, which was the usual residence of the popes, was controlled by the Vice Dominus, the official representative of the Pope. Below him were the chamberlains, the cellarers, the equerries, the guardians of the papal treasuries, the librarian, etc. The chancellor's office was manned by a corps of notaries, the most important of whom, called the primus serius and the secunda serius, were numbered among the great ecclesiastical dignitaries. They were often clerics in minor orders and married. Quote, the Roman clergy were recruited from 2 sources. Those belonging to the lower class were trained in a kind of seminary, the Schola Cantorum, which was situated not far from the Lateran. It was also known as the orphanage. The children of the nobility were received into the palace among the chamberlains. Both classes received the tonsure at the outset of their careers, a right which admitted them to the ranks of the clergy and gave them the much appreciated privilege of decorating their horses with the white saddlecloths. During this period of preparation, they took the position of acolytes. The other minor orders, owing to their practical disuse, had fallen into insignificance. The acolytes were, as a rule, married. It was not until after promotion to the major orders that they bound themselves to a celibate life. There were many religious and charitable institutions at Rome: hospices for strangers and pilgrims, hospitals, asylums for foundlings, for the aged, and various benevolent societies known as deaconeries. They were founded on endowments and had their own incomes and official staff. The monasteries were numerous, but of no great importance. The really influential monastic houses were in other parts of Italy, as we know: Monte Cassino, Monte Amiata, San Xavier of Rieti, and Santa Maria of Farfa. From this brief survey of the organization of the little Roman state, we see that it comprised two great rival bodies: the clergy and the army, the ecclesiastical aristocracy and the lay aristocracy. Until the formation of the papal state, the army had enjoyed the political supremacy and all the prestige and the emoluments that were connected with it. It was quite natural that the transfer of this supremacy from the army to the church would not tend to improve the strained relations which had long subsisted between them. They vied with each other to win the favor of the people and the goodwill of the Franks, Lombards, or Byzantines. Both sought, that is, the ecclesiastical aristocracy and the lay aristocracy, both sought by every means to secure the highest offices for their adherents. Political and ecclesiastical intrigues became the order of the day. This state of affairs must be borne in mind if we wish to understand the tragic history of the papacy during the next 3 centuries. When Dante was writing, he had a lot to say about the governing of the church and state. And what was his opinion? Does anybody remember? We kind of went over it a lot.
They have the same idea of Saint Thomas Aquinas.
Which was?
I don't remember. I just
The
remember
church and state should be separate.
They should be separate, however, he didn't
They
say
should work together.
right, and who's higher,
The church.
but it was Dante's experience and education that informed him in the thought that if you get involved politically, that is, if you get involved with the temporal power, it's going to be messy. When I say politics, all of you have an idea of politics that isn't great. Am I right?
yeah.
Okay. Because power corrupts, right? And so Dante, having lived through being cast out, the Guelphs and the Ghibellines and all this stuff, right? He believed that the church should be autonomous and not get involved in temporal affairs. However, having influence over how temporal affairs are set up so that man can be served well, both body and soul. We already see that when you mix the two, you're gonna, because human nature is fallen, it becomes messy very fast. Now, that does not justify the separation of church and state, which they talk about in the United States or in any democracy, because the modern separation of church and state means what? They're completely separate because keep your rosaries off my ovaries, right? I can do what I want. The church can't tell me what to do, and the church can't tell the state how to govern or what kinds of laws to make or what is good for the people. That's, as you know, that's philosophically, spiritually, and theologically wrong. Your body isn't separate from your soul, they're together. So they need to be governed so that both profit. But if you say as the state, well, we don't care that the church says that abortion is murdering babies, that's none of the church's business in the social realm, because as a democracy, we've voted, we've decided, we the people have the authority to make the laws, and whatever law we make is the law. And it can't be judged by a spiritual authority. Well, that's, you all should be like, that doesn't sound right. That's not the kind of separation of church and state we're talking about. Okay, so it gets very confusing very fast. And modern people, when they say separation of church and state, all they mean is we don't want to be told anything by the church as far as governing our lives, spiritual or otherwise. Keep your rosaries off my ovaries. That's what it means. That's different than the papal state having land to rule. Once you have space and people in it, it has to be governed. But the Pope wasn't after that when it happened. Do you just, if you can remember anything, remember that. The forged donation of Constantine. In the Middle Ages, it was generally believed that Constantine the Great, by a solemn edict of donation, had conferred to Pope Sylvester I and his successors dominion over all Italy and the islands of the West. The donation document is first quoted in the middle of the 9th century. It was composed about the year 800 AD. Even in the Middle Ages, it was occasionally doubted by the Emperor Otto III and Arnold of Brescia. Gregory VII quotes it, and Urban II claimed Corsica by virtue of it. According to John of Salisbury, Pope Adrian IV relied on it in claiming the right to dispose of Ireland in 1155. When was Constantine? Edict of Milan, give me a date. 313.
355. Oh.
313. So when we talk about Constantine, we're going back centuries. Okay, this is the 750s, and the Edict of Constantine was 313, and his rule was slightly after that, right? So 400 years later, and then all the way till 1155, the Edict of Donation claims that Constantine in perpetuity gave land to the church. That's what this is talking about. The donation document was seriously attacked in the 15th century, and its falseness proved by Cardinal Nicholas of Cusa and Laurentius Valla. The following extracts reproduce the most important features of the donation, which they proved false. We decree that the Holy Roman Church shall be honored with veneration, and that more than our empire and earthly throne, the most sacred seat of St. Peter shall be gloriously exalted. And we give to it the imperial power, the dignity of glory, and vigor and honor. We have constructed within our Lateran palace to the Savior, our Lord God, Jesus Christ, a church with a baptistry from the foundations. You've heard of the Lateran, St. John Lateran? That goes back to Constantine, if you ever go to Rome. The history is breathtaking.
Wasn't the feast day just like last month?
Yes, dear, very good. We have also constructed the churches of Saints Peter and Saints Paul, chief of the apostles, which we have enriched with gold and silver. On these churches we have conferred estates and have enriched them with different objects. And through our sacred imperial decrees, we have granted them our gift of land in the east as well as in the west, and even on the northern and southern coast, namely in Judah, Greece, Asia, Thrace, Africa, and Italy, and the various islands, under this condition indeed, that they all shall be administered by the hand of our most blessed Father, the Pontiff Sylvester, and his successors, in order that the Supreme Pontiff may not deteriorate, may be rather adorned with power and glory, even more than is the dignity of an earthly rule. Behold, we give over to the aforementioned most blessed Pontiff, our fathers Sylvester, the universal Pope, as well as our palace, as has been said, and also the city of Rome and all the provinces, districts, and cities of Italy or of the western regions, and relinquish them by our inviolate gift to the power and sway of himself or the pontiffs his successors. Wow. Question number 5 asks, was the temporal sovereignty of the popes founded on the forged donation of Constantine? Yes or no?
No,
No. Why?
because they were the only authority available when Rome was being invaded.
That's it. It's Rome didn't do that. Rome didn't try. And before now, we don't hear of the pontiff saying, hey, this is our land. I mean, that's a large swath of land. We don't hear the popes claiming that for temporal power. But later on, it was referred to in order to claim temporal power. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the donation of Constantine. Me neither. Take a break.